In a world full of answers, some questions are never solved. Strange deaths, vanished people, haunting mysteries that defy logic. These are not stories from movies. They're real, and they still haunt the edges of what we think we know. Tonight, we revisit one such story. This is a true tale of terror. It was January 1959. The Soviet Union was deep in the Cold War, and in the heart of Russia, life moved with the quiet certainty of winter. In the city of Sverdlovsk, 9 young students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute were preparing for the adventure of a lifetime, a 300-kilometer trek across the frozen Ural Mountains. Their goal? Mount Otorten, a name that, to the local indigenous Mansi people, meant, "Don't go there." Sipini Batumariquirik Sesia Mad Udenvice. But the team didn't believe in folklore. They were athletes, engineers, future scientists. Led by Igor Dyatlov, just 23 years old, their group included 7 men and 2 women. All were highly experienced hikers, trained in survival, and skilled in winter travel. They set out with confidence. The first days were uneventful. They traveled by train, then truck, then on foot, documenting everything in journals and photographs, laughing, singing, even posing in the snow. But on February 1st, they made a crucial decision. Instead of descending into a forested area for shelter, they set up camp on the exposed slope of a peak called Kholat Syakhl, the Mountain of the Dead. Why they stopped there, no one knows. That night would be their last. Weeks passed, no word came. Families grew concerned. The Institute organized a search party. Local volunteers, students, military men, and even planes were sent into the mountains. And then they found the tent. Call, speak Collet. Signal almost have an instuck to the shaft. It was half buried in snow, eerily still. The canvas was slashed open from the inside. Glorly dullum, boots, jackets, food, gear, was all left behind. The hikers had fled into a snowstorm in temperatures as low as at -30°C, wearing only socks, light clothes, or nothing at all. Why? What could make experienced hikers tear through their only shelter and run into the cold? Equally to Lodge was Lan. The first 2 bodies were found near a forest, under a cedar tree. Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko, both barefoot, stripped to their underwear. Their hands were shredded, torn from climbing the tree, perhaps trying to escape or look for something. A fire had been lit, but it wasn't enough. Soon 3 more bodies were found. Igor Dyatlov, Sina Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin, all frozen in poses that suggested they were crawling, trying to return to the tent. Autopsies showed early signs of hypothermia. Slobodin had a skull fracture, not fatal, but unusual. Still, nothing explained why they had fled. It took 2 more months to find the final 4. They were buried under 4 meters of snow in a nearby ravine. These were not normal deaths. Nikolai Thibo-Brignulo had a crushed skull. Semyon Zolotaryov and Ludmila Dubinina had broken ribs. So severe, the force was compared to a high-speed car crash. Ludmila's eyes were missing. Her tongue had been torn out. Stranger still, there were no external wounds, no scratches, no bruises, as if the trauma came from within. And parts of their clothing? Radioactive. The Soviet investigation ended quickly. No suspects, no clear explanation. Just this: they died due to a compelling natural force. Then the case was closed. Files were sealed. No one was allowed to speak publicly. But rumors spread. Was it a secret military test? Some claim the hikers stumbled into a classified experiment. Parachute mines or chemical weapons. But there were no burns, no shrapnel, no official records. Was it a missile crash? Strange metallic debris was reportedly found nearby, but the government never confirmed it. Could it have been infrasound? A rare weather pattern called the Kármán vortex street might have created low-frequency vibrations, triggering panic, nausea, or hallucinations. Could sound have made them flee their tent? What about aliens? Several witnesses in nearby towns reported orange orbs in the sky the same night the hikers died. Military aircraft or something else? And then, the Yeti theory. A photo was found in one of the cameras. It showed a dark, human-like figure in the distance, standing between the trees. Some believe the group was stalked and killed, but no tracks, no signs of a struggle, just snow and silence. In recent years, Russian authorities reopened the case. Their conclusion? A slab avalanche, a sudden collapse of heavy snow, forced the hikers to flee. But critics argue, there was no debris trail. The tent was only partially buried. The slope was too shallow. And why were the injuries so extreme? Even the best science doesn't have all the answers. Over 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries in the world. 9 brilliant young lives lost on a frozen mountain, a tent slashed open from within, crushed bones, missing eyes, a torn tongue, and no one to explain it. Some say it was nature, some say it was man. Others believe it was something else entirely. But the mountain still stands, the snow still falls, and whatever happened that night remains frozen in time. Imagine traveling alone through California, chasing freedom, and ending up inside one of the most infamous buildings in history, the Cecil Hotel in downtown LA. It started as a normal 2013 road trip. Elisa Lam was 21, a student from Vancouver, bright, anxious, battle scars hidden behind a smile. She checked in on January 28th, shared a room at first, but odd behavior unsettled the other guests. They complained. So they moved her to a private room. That's where the silence began. No posts, no texts, no signs of Elisa, until her family reported her missing and police handed out flyers in Skid Row. Hotel cameras were reviewed, roof access was checked, no leads, until one video changed everything. On the night of January 31st, an elevator camera captured Elisa's last moments. She enters, presses every button. The doors stay open. She steps out, back in, pauses, moves her hands like she's communicating with someone unseen. Frantic, afraid, and then she's gone. You've probably seen it. Millions have. Viewers slowed it down, asked, was someone there? Was she hallucinating? Or something supernatural? Then guests noticed something else. The water tasted off, looked murky, ran weak. On February 19th, a full 3 weeks after Elisa vanished, a maintenance worker climbed up to the rooftop. Inside the water tank, they found her, floating, naked, calm on the surface but decomposed. No trauma, no foul play, no drugs, just prescription meds for bipolar disorder. The coroner ruled it accidental drowning, but this doesn't add up. How did she get to a locked rooftop? Why did no alarm alert anyone when she opened the tank lid? And why did she undress? For some, the conclusion is simple. She had a mental episode and climbed in on her own. But for others, it's more sinister. The Cecil's history is dark. Murders, suicides, serial killers, like the Night Stalker, even stayed there. Some say the building is cursed, that it draws troubled souls to it. And then there's the strange coincidence. Elisa's body found just days after a nearby TB test named Lam Elisa was in the news. Coincidence or something more? The hotel was shut down, repainted, rebranded, trying to erase the past. But what happened behind those walls remains. Maybe she wandered in confusion. Maybe she was forced. Or maybe something darker took hold that night. Elisa Lam, 21 years old, lost in LA, found in water, but never truly understood. There's something deeply unsettling about a murder that has no reason. No clear motive, no signs of struggle, just silence and blood. In the summer of 1912, the town of Villisca, Iowa, was quiet, simple, and safe. The kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, where neighbors waved to each other from their porches, and church bells rang every Sunday. The Moore family lived on East 2nd Street. Josiah Moore ran a successful hardware business. His wife Sarah was a teacher. They had 4 young children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul. They were liked by everyone, known for being polite, generous, religious. On Sunday, June 9, 1912, the family attended a children's program at their local church. 2 sisters, Lena and Ina Stillinger, had asked to stay the night with the Moore children. Their parents said yes. That night, 8 people went to bed. None of them woke up. The killer didn't rush. He moved through the house, methodically. Every person was attacked while asleep. The blunt side of an axe crushed their skulls, and after the killings, he stayed. He draped clothes over the victims' faces, covered every mirror in the house, closed the blinds. He wandered into the kitchen, cooked food, left a slab of raw bacon wrapped in a towel on the floor. He filled a bowl with bloody water, as if he had tried to wash his hands. Then he vanished. No one saw him come, no one saw him go. The next morning, a neighbor noticed the house was unusually quiet. She knocked. No answer. Hours later, someone finally entered the home. What they found was a scene so brutal, people had to be carried out screaming. The entire Moore family, gone. The 2 Stillinger girls, gone. Blood everywhere. Walls, ceilings. A trail of violence so extreme, some believed it couldn't have been done by a human. The police were useless. The crime scene was trampled by dozens of townspeople. They had never dealt with something like this before. There were suspects. One was Reverend George Kelly, a traveling preacher who had attended the church event that night. He confessed once, then said he lied. He was arrested, but later acquitted. Another was a rival businessman who hated Josiah. He had motive but no real evidence. Some even suspected a serial killer, possibly connected to other axe murders across the country, but nothing ever stuck. In the years, the house was abandoned, then bought, then abandoned again. People who stayed there heard things, voices, creaking footsteps in the attic, children laughing, doors opening on their own. Some said the house never forgot. Paranormal teams investigated EMF spikes, sudden cold spots, disembodied whispers. A woman fainted in the same room where the Stillinger girls were killed. She said something pressed down on her chest and whispered in her ear, "Get out." One visitor claimed they saw a man standing in the corner of a room, holding an axe, wearing no face. When they turned on the light, he was gone. No footprints, no signs of entry. In 2014, a paranormal investigator stayed overnight in the house. Just before dawn, he stabbed himself in the chest. No one knows why. He survived, but never spoke about what he saw. Today, you can still visit the house. Take a tour, spend the night. People go in with cameras and sleeping bags. Some leave in the middle of the night. Others leave with something attached to them. One woman said she had nightmares for weeks. Another claimed she heard children giggling in her hotel room, hundreds of miles away. No one knows who the killer was. No one knows why he covered mirrors or cooked bacon he didn't eat. But some believe he never left. And at night, he still walks the hallway, axe in hand, waiting.